Today I will be talking something interesting, and then it will cut across for those who are in do something that regards data analytics. If you do something that involved with business intelligence and all of that, so I'm bringing all of that to a central point. So I know the term might look different, like data activation. Okay, but we'll get just right into it. Yeah, first and foremost, about me. Okay, my name is Kelvin. I'm Kelvin Oyanna. I'm a data infrastructure, a data engineer, and a cloud infrastructure engineer. Basically, spent the last 9 years of my life helping businesses to build their data infrastructure. When I say data infrastructure, I mean all the pipelines and then where your data storage and everything you need to provision data for analytics, machine learning, deep learning, and all of those interesting AI stuff. Um, Currently, I work as a senior data engineer with Group M. Group M is an ad tech company. And then here, I work as a senior data engineer and then infrastructure as well. But let's get right into what we have for today. Today, I'm going to walk us through the whole life cycle of doing data, but from the infrastructure side, and how to activate data for business purposes. Now, we're going to look at the backstory, and then I'm going to walk you through what the current analytic workflow looks like so you could understand where we're coming from. And then we also look at the challenges of the current analytic workflow. And then we talk about data activation in proper. What is it about? And then how you, your team, can leverage data activation to make sense of data for your company. And then we are going to look at how data activation work, all of the behind the scene, and then how does it benefit you or benefit your company. And then subsequently, I move on to take on the use cases. And then finally, I show you a brief demo on how this can be done in a production environment. Now let's get to the backstory. So like a year plus ago, I was brought in as a consultant for a project, a data project. Basically, what that means is that I was meant to do what you call data migration. Okay? Now, before I get into that, by show of hands, anyone does data analytics here? You do data analytics? Interesting. Okay. Now, there's the engineering side of data. Now, let me have an idea. Anyone does data engineering here? Data engineering? Okay? Yeah, interesting. Now let me get to the business side. Anyone does, like, you do business intelligence and you make interesting, cool. Now we are going to tie all of this together. Now back to my story. I was brought in as a consultant to do all of that data migration. And then they were doing on-prem. Basically what it means is that all their infrastructure was running within their own server. And now they want to migrate everything to a cloud environment. Now, it looks like smooth, but then it was challenging because basically everything they've been doing is Excel, lots of Excel file, and then so many things, SharePoint and all of that. Now, the data migration part of things. And then, of course, all their dashboard they built on Excel, Power BI, we move everything to a cloud environment. Now, in the course of doing that project, I successfully worked on that and endorsed that data migration. And I find out something interesting. I find out that after that migration, because of course we have a conversation with the team, and then we were asking a few questions. Do you need this dashboard? Is anybody looking at this dashboard? Is anybody looking at this dashboard? We find out that more than 45 to 50 dashboards, nobody was actually using it. Basically, the dashboard were just there, and then nobody was looking at it. And these are dashboard people like the you, the analyst, spend time building all of this dashboard, and then it's abandoned. And then when we finally did the migration, you know when you will remove a plug from something, and you would think people will come and cry and say, why did you remove plug? But nobody was complaining. It's like nobody was even using that thing in the first instance. Nobody was even watching the TV you thought they were watching. So even when you remove the plug, they didn't even know. So you spend your time building report and dashboard using Microsoft Power BI, Tableau, or whatever, and then you are feeling fly, but nobody is actually looking in, right? So that's my backstory. So yeah, you have a reality like this. You get into the team, you find out that we have 1,000+ dashboards, but nobody is looking at them. Because, of course, in the first instance, they will want to see, we want to drive inside, we want to make marketing decisions and all of that. But then, if you look in, 1 week down the line, nobody's actually looking at those dashboards, okay? And then, the frustration of the analyst. Because, as an analyst, you finish building all of those interesting stuff, and then you feel cool. And then, you find out that somebody come to you and said, export this thing to Excel for me. And you're like, do you want to finish me? Like, I spent all this time building this dashboard on Microsoft Power BI so that you can just look at it. Like, you have Power BI Cloud. Like, you deploy that in a Power BI Cloud. And then this person comes to you and he said, export it into Excel for me. Come on. Now, that is the frustration of the data analyst. Okay? Now, let's look at the traditional analytic workflow. What does it look like currently? So, the current workflow follows 2 approaches. The first one is the ETL approach, extract, transform, and load. Anyone is conversant with ETL here? Interesting. And then the second approach is the ELT logic, right? It's basically what you call the modern data stack, DBT and Snowflakes and all of those interesting tools, right? Now, this is the current workflow. And then what does it look like? If you look at your screen, you see that now when you are building ETL pipelines, you migrate data from across all your data sources, and then you consolidate that into a data warehouse. Are we together? You bring all your data from different sources, from Excel, from flat files, from APIs, from logs and all of that. You bring it, centralize it into Snowflakes or BigQuery, and then your data analyst connects their Looker, Microsoft Power BI, or Tableau, and then they build the reports and dashboard. Are we together? Now, this is what the current architecture look like. But there are challenges with this architecture. Now, what is the first challenge here? Most of these reports and dashboard, like I said in my story, we end up building them and nobody uses them. You wouldn't blame them. The reason why they don't use it is because it's not actionable. Because you are just viewing a dashboard and you are seeing what the dashboard is, but it is not helping you to take any concrete action. You just go and look at, what was the month-on-month revenue over time? But can you use that same thing to make a decision? That would have taken a longer process. Okay, so this is the challenges with the current architecture. And then the access to data for analytics becomes a nightmare for the business end users. Now, if you are conversant with people who are in the business end users, the marketing team, the advertising team, and all of the salespeople, most of them, they don't know how to write SQL, right? Most of them, they don't use Python like you do. They don't use all of these latest tools that you use. And then you are trapped into the fact that they need to wait on you to make data ready and export it to them. Maybe put it as an Excel file and send back to them. So this is the challenges with the current analytic workflow. So we have some big questions. Now, how do we shift from just creating dashboards that seeks to make us, oh, you understand data, you view your dashboard, and then you are seeing that, oh, this is what this dashboard is telling me. How do we move from just that to, then that's the question, to where you now have dashboards that are now taking actions based on business objectives? Okay, I'll show you how that can be done. Now, a second question for us is, what if we can put back analytics data into the tools that the business people use, the everyday tools, like Zendesk, all of those, their marketing tools? What if we can put back analytics data into that, so they don't need to learn how to use SQL? They don't need to come to Snowflakes. They don't need to come to Google BigQuery or the data warehouse to make sense of data. What if we can just put back that data, build some kind of system that allows us get data into what they are conversant with, so we don't force them to come and learn SQL or learn Python? These are the big questions before us. Now, this is where data activation comes in the words of Sabinus. Okay? Data activations comes in at this point. So what is data activation? In the real sense of it, it's a rapidly evolving approach, technique, or you say technology, that allows us to sync data from a warehouse, BigQuery, Snowflakes, and sync it back into operational tools like Zendesk, like Salesforce, like HubSpot, and all of that. So we don't force business people. We don't force the very business guys, the sales people, the business intelligence persons. We don't force them to come and get data from the warehouse. We sync data back into the tool they use every day. So again, you understand that one of the problems we have within the tech space is that you can build a very interesting technology and nobody cares about it. And then you feel like you have built something very robust and huge, but nobody really cares about it. If that thing is not simple for them to use, if it's not something they can use like on a day-to-day basis, they are going to abandon it for you. Okay? So that is what data activation is all about. It's a shift from understanding data to taking action on data. So basically what it means is that instead of just building reports and dashboard and then deploy it and tell your business intelligence or your executives that, oh, I'll build a dashboard. Now, what if that same insight is used to make decisions directly in an automated fashion? That is what data activation is all about. So what does data activation driven workflow, how does it look like? Now, I'll show you that. Now, this is a contrast to where we are coming from, the traditional workflow. Here, we are now getting data from the warehouse. Instead of telling the business guys to come to the warehouse and write SQL queries, which they are not interested in, we are now pulling this data and write it back into those operational tools that they use, like the everyday tools that they use. This is the power of data activation. So how does data activation work? It follows a single principle called the reverse ETL. Now, so for those of you who said, I am conversant with ETL, right? Now, imagine you reverse that same ETL, where, so basically your ETL logic is you extract data from here, from here, from here, you pull all of that, and then you bring it into the warehouse, right? Now, what if at that point in time, your APIs, your flat files, your Excel files, your databases, they become your data source. And then BigQuery or Snowflakes or Redshift becomes your destination in that sense. Now reverse that same thing where all of these tools, so you have BigQuery becomes your data source, your source in this instance, and then all those tools become your destination. So that is the whole concept of reverse ETL. Okay. Now, what does that architecture or the whole architecture look like? Now, if you see what you have on the screen here, so you still have the same ETL thing that happens behind the scene. So you have your weblogs, you have your servers, you have your databases, you have data coming from flat files, you have data coming from APIs and all of that. And then you pull all of that, you do transformation on that, and then bring it into the warehouse. Now, you don't stop there. You don't force them to come and plug in Power BI or Tableau to make sense of the data. And then you write a different logic, which is the reverse ETL logic, to take data from the warehouse and take it back into the operational tools that these guys are familiar with. It's a win-win for everybody. They are fine, we are fine, and everybody is on the same page. So what are the benefits of data activation? One, very first thing is the fact that we increase efficiency, because the term looks canny, but operationalizing data means that you don't need to go and view a dashboard before taking action on data. That data takes action within your business process. Take, for example, you've driven marketing campaigns before. So you have marketing campaigns, you target different audiences, right? So what happens is that, so the marketing team comes to you and say, we want to target a certain audience of between this age, from this location, and then with this demography. Then you write SQL query to pull that data, export it into an Excel file, and send it to them. But this time around, we don't have to do that. If we automate the entire process, we can write a logic that pulls that data and then bring it back into the same marketing tools they use, so we can use to target the audience that they require. They don't need to write SQL. They don't need to know how to use snowflakes. They don't need to know how to use they don't need to know how to use Redshift or any of the data warehouse technology. So by so doing, you increase efficiency. And then you also allow those that have domain expertise to create insight from their data. Nothing is as interesting for you to have people who know their thing to do their thing. Am I correct? People who have domain expertise. Because you as a data analyst, you might write your logic to suit them, but what if they know what they are looking for, and then they can make those decisions by themselves, and then they don't need to wait for you for 2-3 days to build a dashboard for them before they can make sense of the data. Are we together? Now that is what we're trying to say. Give back autonomy to the business users. Okay? Now let's go. And then you reduce the time to value. I already made mention of this. The analyst, the marketing team, the product team, and then each of these teams, they don't need to wait for like 3 days or 5 days for you to get a report ready for them before they can start making sense of their data. It takes longer time to deliver value. What if they can start delivering value even at the very point in time when they need those value? So that is what comes with data activation. You increase the time to value. So you make sure people start getting value rapidly. You also help more teams to make data-driven decisions. Now, what does that mean? What that simply means is that you have a number of teams within, for example, if you work with a startup. Now, you have the marketing team, you have the operations team, and then you have the HR team and all of these teams. So what happens is that maybe mostly you have the marketing teams coming to you to provision data for them. The other team, some of them, the HR team, the customer success team, those guys, they can be very, very tricky, right? The customer success team, they could also need you to give them data about customer queries and all of that. Now, all of these teams, with data activation, you can help route data back into their operational tools so they don't wait for you for a long time. Okay? So what are the use cases for data activation? First, marketing campaign. Now imagine that you want to target a certain audience, right? Like I already mentioned, right? If you can sync data from the warehouse into the tools that are used for marketing, you can basically get a whole lot done. And that is the beauty of data activation. In my demo here, I'm going to show you how that can work. So syncing data back from the data warehouse into the marketing tools, you can help to optimize the entire marketing campaign process. And then they have better return on ad spend because these people are working with money which they put into advertising. You also improve customer enhancement. The experiences of customers is improved because, the use case where the customer support team or the customer success team, whatever name that is called within your company, is that when all of these customer complaints are coming, they want to be able to prioritize what tasks who they should respond to first. Some tasks are critical, some are not as critical as others. Now, if you can write your own ETL, your logic, and activate that data into the operational tools, you can help them to make that very, very important decision on the tickets they should deal with first. Okay? Now, a third use case, there are so many use cases, right? A third one could be that you automate trade automation. So imagine you need to buy like a stock, a digital asset, and all of that. And you say, if the value of this stock is at this price, I want to quickly buy. However, if you want to wait to view all your dashboard, so when you get to that threshold, you can go and buy. The market might have moved beyond that value. So what if you have an automated process that helps you take that decision and make a buy or a sell trade when you really need it? These are some of those use cases for data activation. So what are some of the tools you could use for data activation? First is segment. Well known. Another is high touch. There are a number of tools that are out there. However, because we are in the Python community, I will talk more about building your own custom logic, which is the reverse ETL logic. Building your own custom logic. It's not difficult. Few lines of code, you get to where you are going to. Okay? Now, just a quick one. I'll show you what it looks like. So, this is basically a customer analytics data being synced from the warehouse into MailChimp. Now, for those of us who are conversant with MailChimp, it's basically a marketing tool used for doing your lead generation and email marketing campaign. Now, imagine you need to target different audiences, right? So the challenge or what you need to do is you go to the warehouse, you pull some certain audience, maybe people who have not been active for the last 1 month, for example, who live in Nigeria, and then you export that data into an Excel file, then you take it into MailChimp. So you use that as, MailChimp calls that an audience, right? So you specify that an audience, and then you target them with your email marketing, right? Now, that's a whole lot. What if this whole process is automated such that you have analytics data available in the warehouse? We can reroute that logic, get the audience, and write it back into MailChimp as a tool to do our targeting. Now, basically, that is what this demo is about. So it's just to show you the code logic that allows you to do that. I can provide all of this information if you need to explore further and learn how these work behind the scene. Yeah. So basically what I have here is, I have a few stuff imported. Don't worry, for those who don't have those technical muscle, you could look at the code, it's friendly. All you need to do, you need to install a library, the MailChimp library. This cuts across all the other tools, Salesforce, Zendesk. They all have some kind of library that allows you to, it's basically you are doing like a post request via their API endpoints, okay? So you install their libraries, and then what you simply have here, you have a few variables here to define the project ID. So basically, this is getting data from BigQuery back into MailChimp. And then what you simply have here is all of this information, like all the credentials you need, and then all the variables. And then I have a function here. So this function, basically what it does is we have what you call a service account for authentication. So if you want to authenticate to Google Cloud, you need a service account or some user password and all of that. Now, best route for you is to have a service account saved into what you call a secret manager, and then you can retrieve that service account using this function. Now, once this function is done, you could see line 10 here. I initialize that function so that you can retrieve that credential from your secret manager. And then I have the get data from BigQuery. So you could see the get data from BQ there. I don't know if that is... so that function, basically what it does is you pass a query to it. Now, this is what the query looks like. I'll show you the query now. So you send a request to BigQuery to get the data from BigQuery. And then I have a function here to help you to add the audience, the particular audience information, the username, the first name, last name, the email, specifically the email, because that is what you want to use for targeting that particular audience. So you get that data from there and then write it back. So this function here, add customer to audience list in MailChimp. So when you do this, your authentication is fine. You call this function. This gets the data from BigQuery and then add the data to the audience on MailChimp. And then the main function. Simply what you have here, if you see some bunch of SQL query there from line 3 till the end, I'm basically saying select first name, last name, email from the table where the last month active is first. That means customer that has not been active in the last 1 month, they've not been active. And then where they sign up is in Q3. That means they sign up in Q3, like quarter 3, right? Basically, we want to target this audience with this data. And then simply from this logic, running this main function, we are able to get this data from here. So if you see in line 14, I call that function to add customer to audience list in MailChimp. As simple as these few lines of code, you have done some magic. And the magic is simple. You get data from BigQuery, and then you write it back into the operational tools. Nobody comes to you. There is no dashboard involved in getting all of this done. Everything works in an automated fashion. And then, of course, you can schedule this in for those who are conversant with scheduling, right? Apache Airflow, Darkstar, whatever tool you use for doing your orchestration, you can schedule this job to run every 30 minutes, every 1 hour. So what it means is any new customer that comes in, it automatically gets pulled from BigQuery, gets written into MailChimp, and all of that is done seamlessly without needing to build report or dashboard where people are going to spend time, not even looking at those dashboards. Yep, basically that is the wrap-up of what this is all about. But few takeaways from here is the fact that we've moved away from where we build reports and dashboards, and then those dashboards are not actionable. Nobody uses them. Now where we now get data and then write it into operational tools. So everybody is happy. Yeah, I got questions. I'm willing to answer and respond to your questions. I appreciate. Thank you for having me. And then, of course, my social media handles in case you need to follow. Yeah, questions?
Questions. Help us appreciate him.